Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Hello there, ladies and gents. Are you ready to pod? Good. And welcome to another episode of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs. It is I, Fran, doing the intro today for the Dad Rock special. We are discussing Dire Straits and Cheap Trick, hence the introduction. Babs had her dad on previously discussing Eurovision, and I dedicate this to my dad for Dire Straits. You may be able to hear him playing his guitar in the background. And it's also lovely to be able to discuss Cheap Trick for the first time in my entire life, but will it be the last time? So, please enjoy the podcast.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Welcome to another episode of Over Underrated with myself, Fran, and my co-host, Babs. Hello, Babs. How's Belgium? Are you in Belgium?
Hello, Fran. I am not in Belgium. I am in Luxembourg. Once
Shock.
again, if you've listened to the podcast before, you know I've been here before. The very, very exciting Easter eggs we're providing on my location. I would say come and find me, but please don't. So it is international once again, but not in the usual location. It is absolutely freezing here in Luxembourg with negative temperatures. How is it where you are?
I am cozy in sunny Bournemouth. There's no
Nice.
rain, there's no snow, there's just sadness and post-Christmas depression.
Hey, but at least it's not -2, which is the temperature right now.
Ouch. And at least we have music still. So, Babs, have you had any time to listen to music?
I have had time to listen to music, and today I was listening to an album that I think I discovered last year, but it's from 2020. It's called Blue Film by a band called The Tissues. They are an LA band. They say on their profile that they're a dark and noisy art punk quartet. So there we go. So definitely punky but angular. And it's one of those albums where every time I listen to it, I'm like, oh, this whole album is great. I really love this band. But I think because of the etherealness of Spotify, I forget about them and I forget about it until I come across them because, I don't know, I'm looking for a certain term in my liked songs or something. But they are extremely underrated. They've only got 360 monthly listeners. So if angular punk sounds like your kind of thing, check it out. What about you?
So I have purchased my first physical piece of music this year,
Ooh.
which is better than last year. And I have purchased the CD for the band Spectre, mainly because I know they're doing it off their own back. So, I feel like I should give back to Spectre. And it does cancel their tour because Omicron is still present around the UK. So I'm semi-enjoying it. It's not the best album, but having any album by Spectre is a treat.
There we go. Fran can be your A&R man anytime. I pre-ordered the new Blood Red Shoes album as per, coming out very soon. That's my first physical purchase that will not have arrived yet, but that's it.
And today, ladies and gentlemen, our episode is with the theme of Dad Rock, a word I struggle to say. And we're looking at an overrated artist we think is Dire Straits, and an underrated artist we think is Cheap Trick. We have made playlists and we will discuss the songs on the playlist and then at the end decide if we think Dire Straits are overrated or are Cheap Trick underrated. And first, we're doing Dire Straits. So let's begin.
Overrated.
Tell me anything you know about Dire Straits.
Not very much is the answer. I didn't even know they were British, Fran. I thought they were American.
Oh my goodness.
Which, I mean, it's not, I don't think that, okay, for a music lover, maybe that's a bad thing, but they do ape a lot of rock that you traditionally associate with the US. So yeah, and he does have a bit of an American accent. So look, I'm only human. What can I say? And I know the main hits. I think they're fine, but we picked them because they're one of those bands that are beloved by many I've got the Spotify stats at my fingertips. They're the 370th band in the world with 13.3 million monthly listeners. That's a lot for a band that hasn't made an album since 1991. And yeah, I think when you suggested dad rock as a theme, I thought, oh God, because, there's a lot of power chords there and I was a bit concerned. So I'm coming in trying to keep an open mind, but a bit concerned. What you might find amusing, having virtually met my beloved father, Paolo Mendes George, is that I was preparing for this podcast episode next to him yesterday. And I said, oh, Dad, just to let you know, I'm going to be listening to some Dire Straits now. And he was like, oh, God, Dire Straits. They were played incessantly in house parties in Lisbon in the late 70s and the early 80s. I absolutely hate Sultans of Swing and Lady Writer. And I said, OK, then, you might want to leave these sections. But I thought that was quite interesting because I wouldn't say they were my dad's automatic loves, but for him to have such a visceral emotion was very surprising. And I think with some of the songs on your list, you could definitely say they were overplayed, even if you might not think they're overrated. So I need to find another word other than tentatively, but that's how I am coming into this. How about you?
Well, I knew they're British because, I had heard Mark speak in his perfect Geordie accent.
Oh, Geordie.
He's a Geordie, hence why
he's a Geordie, but his dad is Hungarian Jewish, which I had no idea.
Actually, I think that English have then moved to Glasgow and then went down to Geordie Land.
Geordie Land.
The official title of Newcastle. So yeah, I have a father, shock, and being of a certain age, he loved Dire Straits because he was too old for punk. And he is a guitar player and loves the fiddly sort of guitar actions of Mark Knopfler. So I believe I remember my father going away on his motorbike to see them a couple of times in London and then coming back and obviously being frustrated that he couldn't share any of his fun with his children or his wife.
Oh, and there's three of you, isn't there? So
there was three of us.
That's a shame.
And it's before Facebook groups. You just had to enjoy Dire Straits and then come home and, feel the frustration not being able to share the experience of.
Or talk to random men in pubs, I would say.
Yes.
I'd go down that route.
All that. So because of this, I was subjected to Dire Straits as a child.
As well as Paolo, okay, yeah.
And yeah, I didn't hate them. I remember he played a lot of Bob Dylan, who I hated because his voice was harder to enjoy. But I think because Dire Straits were more of a melodic guitar band, it wasn't horrific for me as a 5-year-old. And obviously, I remember Money for Nothing and being, excited by the video because 3D animation.
I mean, for the time, it was really something. Yeah.
And that was like playing on like ITV. So yeah. I always was aware of Dire Straits. I don't own a Dire Straits album. All the songs I put on this playlist is because I just knew of them through my dad and through the world of music. And I try to make sure the playlist was spread out across the 6 albums. Mark Knopfler also did some soundtracks in the 80s, which I kind of put in the same bracket as Dire Straits. I think they appear on the greatest hits as well. But I didn't put in the track from Local Hero with the dun, 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 which is played before every Newcastle United football game.
Okay. You saw my blank face. I have no idea. No idea.
There you go. It may just be a truly British thing. I'm always surprised that Dire Straits, being the band they were, have never played a gig since 1994.
Yes, really surprising.
You think they would do the 30th anniversary of Brothers in Arms or something? It's mad, isn't it?
It's mad, especially so is it Brothers in Arms that's the 8th best-selling record in British history?
Yeah, 30 million albums sold.
Mad. Do you know why? I mean, I'm going to presume, Fran, you've watched at least one documentary.
Well, I think the reason is it's because of CD. So it was one of the first ever albums to be recorded on a CD. And listening to Brothers in Arms, they knew it because, that is an album made or to be listened to it in posh speakers, that is a stereo album. That was one of the selling points. But obviously it had, 5 big singles as well. But yeah, what I find strange is how popular they were from the start, because I don't think they're that commercial. The first 2 albums, listening to them again now, to me, they really sort of they're both top 5 albums in America and the UK, which is kind of bonkers, to be fair. Like,
Yeah, was it the record label? Was it that they built up a solid fan base through touring? Or I mean, I don't know, because we're calling it dad rock. It is noodly guitar with other things going on in the background. And I guess this what was the sort of around punk era, glam rock and hard rock was happening, but it was something a bit different. So did people still have an appetite for it? I don't know. I'm curious. I'm curious as to why they're so big.
I mean, they got signed really fast. I think they got signed within a year of forming. And people have said because of punk rock was so popular, the older statesmen in the record companies were far more happier to sign a band like this, who they understood, rather than a scary new punk band. And that's maybe why they got signed so fast. And I guess people of a certain age were happy to have this kind of music around again, because they understood it. It had like blues references and folk references. So maybe there's a bit of that happening. Like it was playing to the anti-punk brigade a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Where I think, that's it. All sorts of guitar rock was popular in that time period. But the fact that they continued having that success into the 80s, like their sound does adapt. And there's some interesting things with pianos and classical guitars that we'll talk about, I'm sure. But maybe with Dire Straits more than other bands we've discussed, the songs that I don't like, I can understand why some people like them. And I think it's a bit difficult to separate some of the biggest hits and be objective about it, because they're just such radio staples. But let's see. Should we get into it and see what we find?
I started the playlist obviously with the Ton of Love from 1980s Mickey Movies, which was a top 5 UK album. And I only discovered it in the past 10 years, and it became one of my favourites. I believe at the start it's like some organ from, is it the musical Carousel? Is it something? Or
oh, I didn't know. I just put unusual atmospheric beginning.
So it's about love affair in a fun fair, and when he mentions the Spanish city, he's not talking about the country Spain. He's talking about a fun fair in Whitley Bay called the Spanish City.
Oh, I see.
There you go.
Who's done the deep dive of the lyrics this time? I think it's you.
Thank you so much. So in 1980, this is their third album, and Mark Knopfler's brother, Dave, the rhythm guitar player, had left because of musical differences whilst making this album. And I think one of the main differences is that this album was the first album to have a keyboard player with Alan Clark. And as you mentioned before, it has piano on it, which is not, I don't think, on the first two albums at all. The first albums are very much like bluesy, rootsy guitar rock. So with this, I've got a feeling that like the albums only maybe have like 6 songs on each album because they're really long. One of the songs I skipped was a 14-minute song.
I am delighted, because this is 8 minutes 10, and when I started listening, I was like, has he done a Kent on me again? And I was like, okay, there's only one more that's H24, fine.
Oh yeah, you have to ask the question constantly, like, why does this have to be so long? But I guess with this track, they do use the time. Like, it does kind of have maybe different sections, and it has like kind of like 2 choruses. So the first chorus is when it goes, and the big wheel keeps on turning, burning, etc., etc. And then later on, I prefer the second chorus, is when he sings about the girl, you look so pretty to me, like you always did. And that guitar and that piano and that hush vocal is the best part of Ton of Love for me. The second part I adore. I don't know why I adore a Geordie singing in a hush vocal, girl, you look so pretty.
We all have our kinks.
It does something to me. I'm not going to lie. It does something to me. So do you find this... and a fun fact for you fat lovers, Leslie Ash from British TV is in the video of this song. Ooh. And interesting enough, so when MTV became a thing, Dire Straits were on board, but they cleverly hid the band because they're not exactly Duran Duran, Dire Straits. And, so they have a lot of sexy models in their videos in the early days to Ton of Love and Romeo and Juliet, etc. And again, sorry, Babs, you may have not this.
No. I am a fact lover, and I want to hear the facts.
Okay.
So when it started, I was thought, okay, maybe this isn't what I think it's going to be. But then I called it the Dire Straits guitars. come in, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I expected. I think this tells a story, and I will give credit where credit is due. Dire Straits paint some very beautiful images with their lyrics.
Mhm.
It's much deeper than I thought it would be, and maybe a reason why so many people like them.
You know that he was a journalist. He wrote for the Yorkshire Post as a teacher, so he's quite an educated man. Like, so obviously they're all quite old. Not I say old for rock and roll. I think they're all in their late 20s when they formed. So they all already had jobs, and he had worked in university as a writer. So yeah, he's quite
so interesting. Well, having just recorded an episode with Ryan from the Broken Record Player podcast about System of a Down, same with them, and they have very smart. Like Serge Tankian has a marketing degree and they all had careers, and I'm like, yeah, maybe it's a bit like comedians where having a bit more life experience and seeing the world makes things cleverer. So the song Tunnel of Love definitely tells a story, and I like how it slows down towards the end and the classical sounding piano. It reminded me a bit of Outlaw Pete by Bruce Springsteen. I think just because it's sort of, an epic. But I did find it quite long. I thought it was fine, but like I didn't hate it, but I listened to it once or twice and then I was like, yeah, I'm out, sort of thing.
Which chorus did you prefer? The big wheel keeps turning, or the girl you look so pretty to me?
I liked A Hushed Man, even though I have critiques. Sometimes he sounds a bit too hushed. On this one, he doesn't, and I generally do like his voice, which I hadn't really thought about.
It's kind of weird. He doesn't really sing at all, really. Like for this kind of like, I guess, stadium rock bands they kind of became. You think of like a big like a Bono strong voice, and he doesn't. He barely sings. It's all kind of like hushed, or he lets his guitar be his voice. I was going to say it's the
guitars doing the talking a lot of the time, right? So there we go.
So. Moving on to Sultans of Swing.
I never heard this before. No.
So this when I got into like Dire Straits a bit later on in my life, I was kind of shocked this wasn't a massive hit, because it's odd for like 1978 that this would be a massive radio track, because it doesn't really have a chorus. Like the chorus is a guitar sound, and I think it's a. Again, I don't think he really writes about himself at all. Like, this is him apparently watching a crap band called the Sultans of Swing. That's where he got the idea from. And yeah, it has that introduction to that Dire Straits guitar sound we instantly know, but you can't really describe. Although I just watched a Justin Hawkins video, and he taught me that Mark Knopfler only plays with 3 fingers. It's just his thumb and 2 fingers. So he does that amazing sound picking just with those 3 fingers, like a claw. Yeah, and that's his own unique style. So there you go. It's probably a song everyone knows. It's out there. I don't hate it. I don't love it. It's just what it is.
Yeah, do you know, when I saw that you'd put some big hitters on here, I was like, oh, okay. But actually, it's not a bad song. I agree. I think it was nice to listen to it in the context of preparing for a podcast, not something on the radio when you're expecting something you like a bit more, let's say. And going to look at the lyrics, I thought like, wow, okay, firstly it feels very American. I mean, just if we're playing some bingo, Dixie, honky tonk, it ain't what they call rock and roll. The Sultans, they play Creole, and that, I mean, come on, like I don't think, having not done any research on them, no wonder you think they're not British, even though they do talk about London Town as well on this one. Fair enough.
Yeah, but sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it's not a bad song, but it is, for me, massively overplayed.
I guess it's strange, because I guess they had no idea they'd be big in America when they did this. So yeah,
no?
it's strange.
Is it their first album? It is.
Yeah. It's a breakthrough single.
But having just talked about I talked about the Tissues at the beginning of this podcast. I was convinced they were a British band because it is angular punk, and I think you would associate that more with Britain. But then you go and you're like, oh, okay, well, clearly these are very British inspired band. Or the Killers, even your faves. Just because you're from a certain place doesn't mean you sound like it. And they've clearly taken influence from the US.
Yeah, and famously Sparks, I think they've been labelled as the best British band from America. So moving on to another of the tracks I liked growing up. This is Private Investigations from Love Over Gold, their number one UK album. But by this time, I've noticed they are only just scraping the top 20 in America. So as they became bigger elsewhere, they became less successful in America. So this, bizarrely, is a number 2 hit single.
That surprises me.
Because this is not a 3-minute radio hit at all. This is another epic.
I guess by this point, they'd released 4 albums in 5 years or something like that. So they had a big fan base. And I think probably their fan base went along with them. They clearly sounded original at the beginning and continued their evolution by adapting to the 80s and adding a few synths and pianos. So maybe that's why.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know how long it stayed in the charts. It could have been one of those in and out really fast. Once all the fans bought it, that was basically it. Have you seen The Princess Bride, the film?
Yes, I have.
So he scored that movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the guitar in this sounds quite like that score, I think, later on in years to come. This is very much piano, percussion, and blues. The pianos use a lot more than in the early days. I guess this is another cliche stadium rock track with the sort of like the staggered piano sort of like riff going dun, dun, dun sort of thing. It's got power chords. It takes about 4 minutes until the bass player starts playing. And yeah, it's another interesting lyric about a private investigator. We don't hear it every day in the pop charts, do you?
I was thinking, I was like, is this the first ever song about a private detective? I don't know. Right in and let us know. Fran, I love this song. This was my favorite on the list. I thought it was another unusual beginning. Spanish guitar and piano I wrote is Chris Isaak coming out or something. Then there's this sort of Neil Tennant West End girl sort of rapping that he's doing. And I was just like, what's going on here? Again, I would have never guessed this was Dire Straits. If I'd listened to this, I would have thought it was Scott Walker, honestly.
Even the last part when it goes a bit stadium rock with the guitar. Well,
no. The ending definitely is more Dire Straits, but a big chunk of this song absolutely doesn't sound like that. Yeah. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it more. But I think it should definitely soundtrack a film noir, Maltese Falcon remake or something like that. I really enjoyed it.
You can tell why he got gigs being a composer around this time. And interesting, speaking of private, do you know that he wrote Private Dancer for Tina Turner? No,
A Dancer for Money. I didn't know that. No.
So that it was going to be on Making Movies, but then he decided that that doesn't really fit his vocal. So yes, he gave it to Tina Turner, and I believe it was a little bit of a hit for her, maybe.
Yeah, and he was the sole songwriter. I'm looking it up now. That's it. Oh my god, the album version is 7 minutes 11.
Jesus Christ!
Wow, I did not know that.
He also worked with Bob Dylan as well in the early 80s. Bob Dylan saw them play, and he hired him and his drummer to play on a couple of albums. Little fun fact for you guys there. Little fun fact.
Well, given that I've been listening to the Bruce Springsteen episode that we recorded. Yeah. I definitely got Bruce Springsteen and Bob Dylan vibes in this episode. Let's say I will mention them when they come in.
So, moving on to On Every Street, which is from their final album of the same name in the 90s after a 6-year break, and people call this a flop, but I think it sold 8 million copies. So if that's a flop,
nice flop to have.
Give me your flops, please. Give me your flops. Yeah, it wasn't a great album. Calling Elvis was maybe the only radio song, but this is very much back to the mid 80s Dire Straits we maybe love or hate. It's got a lot of sax, it's got some lovely guitar parts, and I think this could also be from a film. It's got limited vocals, which is what I like. I think this song would be fine without any vocals. I just enjoy the guitar.
What I enjoyed about this song was the orchestra. I think there's like an oboe at some point, and I was thinking, God, how often is an oboe featuring, so prominently in a song? I thought this was quite Bruce Springsteen, and I thought it was less charming. It was a less charming Streets of Philadelphia, as much as I enjoyed the orchestra. I enjoyed the last third of the song much more than the beginning. It took me a while to warm up to it, and it's interesting that you say you would happily not have vocals, because I thought the lyrics were beautiful. Have you read them?
They hit me.
The sacred and profane, the pleasure and the pain, somewhere your fingerprints remain concrete. A 3-chord symphony crashes into space. The moon is hanging upside down. I don't know why it is. I'm still on the case. It's a ravenous town, and you still refuse to be traced. Seems to me such a waste. And every victory has a taste that's bittersweet, and it's your face I'm looking for on every street. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. I guess
Very nice.
after the Straits broke up, he went down more of a country vibe. And
I did read that.
So they sort of like now to storytelling will work with that genre music a lot more, maybe than rock and roll.
I think it is storytelling. I mean, we've had guests on. We've had guests on who really enjoy a band for their lyrics, you know, almost as much as their music. And we're just, what can we say, Fran? We're just cold-hearted people or something. We're just not cold-hearted. I mean, the thing is, I genuinely love reading and books, and I enjoy a bit of poetry, but when it comes to music, just I have other concerns.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, a good lyric is going to stay with me. I do have ears, surprisingly.
However, I would say the next song has some questionable lyrics.
Yes, we discussed a little bit of this pre-record. So this is a song that you may have heard, guys. Money for Nothing and Your Chicks for Free. So this is from the Uber selling Brothers in Arms. This is the big video, the big production. It's got Sting, it's got Simps, it's got headbands. It has that guitar riff which screams 80s and I've got money. It's interesting because it's a song about people like wanting money, and it's kind of like a piss take about them, you know. You don't need those things really, but then on the other side, this is a band who are making a fucking fortune by selling a song. So it's like a kind of an interesting contrast. So narratively, apparently he was in like a kitchen, and there was two salesmen in there watching MTV, and they're talking about, oh, why can't we be doing that and just playing guitar and getting chicks free and living the easy life, you know? And then in 1983, on the adverts, to get cable TV so you could watch MTV, they'd have pop stars singing, I want my MTV. And that's why he got Sting in to do it. And he's singing it to the tune of Don't Stand So Close to Me, which means that he gave Sting a credit on the single.
Right. And I mean, it is Sting singing on this song, which I didn't know.
Oh, really?
I didn't know before this. No, I didn't. I mean, it's that thing of once you know it's Sting, you're like, oh, of course it's Sting. But actually, because of, I don't know, all the overlay or whatever the more, I'm sure there's a more technical term. I hadn't really paid attention. But
and obviously they're both from Newcastle, and I think they sang it at Live Aid as well. If you want to check out, check it out, guys. But it's a song that has been heard a billion times. I don't hate it, and I know that there's some lyrical issues, which I think Bounce is going to discuss now.
Oh yeah. Well, I would say I think this is a good song. I actually, you know, I'm less indifferent about it than Sultans of Swing, and I think I'd forgotten about the weird extended beginning and the I Want My MTV. So when you're listening to it, just waiting for the guitars to come in and the microwave ovens and all that, you're like, oh, okay, this is really world building, you know, and yeah, the harmonies are great. There's a fantastic mesh of synths, there's horns, there's guitar, there's robot noises. It is, you know, 85 pure 80s and still with a really good guitar. I think they, like I said, they're a band evolving with the times and doing it seemingly effortlessly. And yeah, this album was recorded in Montserrat. That was the fact that I was like, oh, it's nice for some. So yeah, the irony of I hadn't even thought about, like, you know, it's a song called Money for Nothing, and they, you know, went off to a lovely Caribbean island to record it. But yes, as Fran and I talked about, they use the F word a lot, and it's quite shocking because they use it quite liberally. The reason that's kind of given, it's because like as Fran said, it was a conversation that he'd overheard that he was kind of transcribing, right? And he's playing it's two different characters who are the salesmen in this shop. So, you know, you could argue that they're just playing characters, but this is the 80s. This is pure AIDS crisis. That's just adding fuel to the fire, and they're absolutely huge. I just think, how do I say this without sounding patronizing? People don't always understand irony, right? It's that thing sometimes of some, you know, if you're playing a character or being ironic, you know, I read so many tweets about how people are so woke these days that they have issues with characters in books, and people are like, are you an idiot? You know, like what? So everyone who's in a book should just be a perfect character? No, that's not quite it. But when you're one of the biggest bands in the world and you're using the term over and over again in the time where it's a population that's very highly stigmatized, it really hits home listening to it now. And you didn't have, like, you could have substituted it for something else. Like, I think you could have still made the point that they're making in the song without using the word. And yeah, that's my view.
Obviously, not as a non-gay man, I don't remember. I don't know if that's word has become worse over the past 30 years. I don't know.
I don't think so.
No?
I've just seen Power of the Dog. Like, no, that was never used. It was never. I just think it's that thing of, if you're not hit with it, it doesn't really affect you, right? I don't think the context is enough to justify it, basically.
It'd be interesting. Surely Mark has been asked this question since the last decade. I wonder. Yeah, I should have maybe researched to find out what he thinks, because I don't know if he really plays.
I would imagine that he would say, yeah, it was of its time, and we wouldn't use it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We hope so, guys. We hope so. Whilst we're talking about Brothers in Arms, I did discover that until Adele's 21, this had the longest run on album history in Holland, with 269 weeks in the charts.
Wow.
The Dutch love a bit of Dire Straits, guys.
That doesn't surprise me, given some of their Eurovision entries.
I also can imagine, like, you know, a Dutch guy wearing a headband more than other nations for some bizarre reason.
Dutch guys very often have long hair, like a little cowboy hat with the hair poking underneath. Why not? Sorry, like our podcast does reasonably well in the Netherlands, and we are sometimes in the Netherlands Apple chart. So we love you, Netherlands.
And we love to be in the charts for 269 weeks. Moving on to Making Movies track called Romeo and Juliet, which I guess is the second most popular song by Dire Straits, I assume.
Really?
Oh, do you not? Oh, okay. This is a British thing. So in Britain, you'd hear maybe 3 songs, and this would probably be one of them. Like, so this was like from that era. This was the big one. I guess this also has their best video. It's got a very stylistic video with lots of models and lots of like cool fashion lighting, and I've always been a fan. I watched him talking about this, and he got the riff from getting into country music and folk music in the 70s, and that's how he learned that picking style, which is where he came from.
3 fingers, yeah.
And then it's actually quite a simple song, more than I thought. Apart from the chorus, where it goes full on like band, Juliet, and then dun dun. But in the verses, it's kind of, you know, laid back, just a beautiful sounding guitar, and him, you know, telling the story of a modern day Romeo and Juliet with some extra sort of piano touches around. The Killers have covered this. This is quite a good version. If you want to do some further listening, it's probably my favourite song by Dire Straits. This is why I'm going to cry tears of blood when Babs hates it.
It's Babs's least favourite.
Wowzers.
Yeah. Because, so Fran, you put 11 songs on this playlist. And I was like, oh yeah, you've put 11. Can you take one off? And you said, oh, you know, I've taken this one off because it sounds a lot like Romeo and Juliet. And I was like, well, thank God he did. I, you know, with love, I think this sounds a bit like a Bob Dylan / Bruce Springsteen ripoff. Really, that's what it gave me. And the lyrics are very nice, and the ending is intriguing. I put that. I think it goes in directions that you don't expect. But personally, I prefer Baz Luhrmann's retelling of Romeo and Juliet rather than Dire Straits. I'm sorry.
I love it when he goes, "You and me, kid. How about it?" And the guitar sort of.
Fran, what you need is a hushed Geordie in your life. This is what we're discovering. Just hop on a train to Newcastle and go and find one. You know, then all will be well.
Yeah, so this is interesting, guys. Doing an international podcast, we discover that, you know, the songs that we think are massive elsewhere and never played. So yeah,
no. And I was, you know, so the songs I knew from this playlist were only the songs from Brothers in Arms.
The next track we're going to discuss is the album title Brothers in Arms. This is a single, bizarrely. I believe the video was superimposed images of black and white Mark playing guitar with World War I scenes in the background.
Okay, so I haven't seen the video, so this is an unusual one because he's in it.
Yeah, I think by then, obviously, when they did have him in the video, he'd always be him performing. He never did any like awkward acting scenes like other bands had to do.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a song by Simple Minds called Belfast Child. Do you know that song?
Yes, I do know that child.
And I think it's similar.
I know that child. I do know that song. Sorry, I do know that child from Belfast. I do know that song.
Similar in production. Very quiet with like, you know, some sort of like keyboard strings moving up. Again, we've got the strained vocals. I think other bands of that era would have had like a power ballad vocal hit coming in halfway through, but it's kind of, you know, it's just strained, and it was randomly a hit single around the world, and I believe the Army play it quite often to this day.
That doesn't surprise me because given it's called Brothers in Arms. How do they feel about that?
He's on board. I think when it was the 30th anniversary of 20th anniversary of the Falkland Islands, he re-released it.
So Brothers in Arms, having just said that the only songs I knew were the Brothers in Arms ones, actually I didn't know this song. I thought I knew this song because it was called Brothers in Arms, but actually it's the album. So I enjoyed the thunderstorm beginning.
I do love hearing rain or thunder in any song. If I ever had to be
okay, so here we go. This is what we need with Fran: Hush Geordie and some rain. So you need a Hush Geordie and a rain stick in your house, and then, you know, just put a face mask on, sit in your bath, you'll be fine. It's good to know. Get to know these things.
Yes, please.
It doesn't surprise me that it was a big hit around the world, because to me it sounds like some kind of Celtic folk song with an electric guitar, and I generally, that seems to resonate with people. You know, people like Enya, people like Cranberries, people like whatever it is. Belfast Child, yeah, that's a good comparison, and I like Belfast Child. I wasn't a huge fan of this song, but I didn't dislike it. I thought I actually, it bothered me a little bit that you couldn't hear his voice. It was a bit too hushed for me. I wanted power ballad, I think would have been not great either, but just, you know, a little bit louder would have been nice. But the lyrics are beautiful. Shall I read them out to you again? I think this is the only other one I have
if you can add a Geordie Hush vocal to it.
I mean, no, I can't. I can't do Geordie. I'm afraid I'm gonna have to do my generic Southern English accent. But these mist-covered mountains are a home now for me, but my home is the lowlands and always will be. Someday you'll return to your valleys and your farms, and you'll no longer burn to be brothers in arms. Through these fields of destruction, baptisms of fire, I've witnessed your suffering. As the battle raged high, and though they did hurt me so bad, in the fear and alarm, you did not desert me, my brothers in arms. Shedding a tear. So yeah, looking at those lyrics, absolutely doesn't surprise me that it's been taken up by the Army. But yeah, I think for me this was, you know, a middling one on the playlist. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it.
So completely changing your direction, we're going to a lady writer from Communique, I believe it's called. Is that correct?
Communique,
from 1979. This is a track that I kind of knew. I wanted to try and put a song per album, and this is the only song I kind of recognize from the album. It's very similar to Sultans of Swing.
It is.
I'm guessing, reading the lyrics, that he's observed. Well, this is how I think. I think he sees someone.
I looked this up, so I can tell you what it is. But yeah.
So I thought he sees someone on TV, a lady who's now an author, but he may have dated in the past, and he's now a bit bitter and gutted that she's become successful and he's a falling star. That's how I kind of think was happening. I quite like how he says jazz singer bizarrely halfway through. Where's that come from? And it's quite weird to have backing vocals at the end of it, which doesn't happen in any other Dire Straits track. So it's you've heard it all before. It's a little bit naff. It's a little bit, you know, uncle and auntie dancing at a wedding. So what's your views on the lyrics?
So my view on the lyrics, according to a 1984 biography, it was inspired by Marina Warner, who he saw on a TV program, and she wrote a scholarly book about the cult of Virgin Mary. And the way that they've written this, I mean, again, this is the internet. For some reason, her appearance struck a chord with Knopfler, bringing back painful memories of a love that was no more. There's real venom in this song, and it is evident that any resemblance the talented Miss Warner bore to his former lover was strictly physical, which I'm like, okay, this sounds like a fanboy or fangirl defending them. Because when I first read the lyrics, I thought, holy fuck, what is this misogyny? That was my initial one. And I think the fact it's called Lady Writer, and I'm like, well, no one says male engineer, right? So I was like, okay, yeah, it's someone he saw who reminds him of a former lover. Fine. Musically, I wrote, this is Sultans of Swing 2, and it's fine. I think, yeah, the guitars are very similar. I wonder if it was, hang hang on, Consultants of Swing. Yeah, it's before. Yeah, was it something that they wrote? They must have maybe written it around the same time, right? But having releasing 2 albums in 2 years, you'd think it would just maybe would have been an off cut that they included on the next one. I don't know. It was fine.
Yeah, it's just a bit weird why it became such a big hit, because you think people would say, "Hey, I've already bought this before, guys. I don't want to have the same song again." So.
Well, I think that some people do want more of the same. So
I
yeah.
guess. See, Oasis. So, to another killer pop song. Is this, before I go into this? Is this played in Europe?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So yes, this was a big hit, I believe, in for UK and especially in America. It is the rock. It is the rock of life. Yes, it is the rock of life with that cheesy keyboard riff we all know. And I guess it's strange to have a keyboard as the main hook for a Dire Straits song, because Mark Knopfler is the composer. Apparently, I always assumed this was about American life, but this apparently is about buskers in the London scene. And when he's referencing people playing in London clubs, playing the old-fashioned rock and roll. He's like, that is the walk of life. He said he does regret doing the woohoos. Looking back,
that one.
Woohoos. Okay. Yeah, he does regret.
I don't mind the woohoos.
I love and hate this. I think.
Interesting.
There's a lot of mid-80s keyboard naffness. You can imagine it's been played at American sporting venues at halftime. Apparently, this nearly didn't make the album because I thought it doesn't sound like anything else on the album, and I guess I know where it doesn't. But yeah, I thought I'd have to, to put it on the playlist because it's such a big hit for them.
It is. And Fran, I had no idea this was Dire Straits.
Wow.
So when it came on, I was like, this song, what? I thought it was Bruce Springsteen. If someone asked me, I would have thought it was Bruce Springsteen. So shockingly, for saying this sounds like Bruce Springsteen, and, it's definitely like a country sound and has, I think the synth and pop sensibilities warm me to it. I imagine it is. You mentioned this for other songs, but I think this must be a fun one to dance to at a wedding, do a bit of, country dancing or, grabbing on by the arms and twirling round. I imagine it's a good one, but yeah, I was really thrown because it's another song that's on the radio that I clearly hadn't paid attention to enough to know it was Dire Straits. But I find it interesting that you say that you love and hate it. I get it, but actually I think I haven't heard it enough to hate it. I'm guessing it's one that your dad put on a lot.
Probably. I mean, he even may have played it on his own keyboard with one finger on a crappy Casio from 1997. So, flashbacks. So, ending the playlist, I chose a live record because a lot of the fans say Dire Straits are best sing live. So I put on a track from Alchemy, which is their most famous live album, and I've chosen the title track from the album Love Over Gold because it seemed very, very cliche Dire Straits. It's like a smoky, jazzy ballad with a new expansive sound of like keyboards and beautiful instrumentation. Apparently, this version is shortened down. The album version's like 6 minutes long. But I did that for your benefit, of course.
Thank you.
I'm guessing it's about an escort with the lyrics like dancing through doorways, that kind of thing. I
did not look at the lyrics.
Did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't look. So
quite seedy lyrics. But yeah, that album, Love Over Gold, I think it's got 5 songs. I mean, if I'm paying hard money, I want more than 5 songs, Mark. I don't care how long they are.
So I absolutely hated the beginning of the song. And now I was thinking, like, I'm guessing Fran's put this because it's, it's a classic, or it's going to show how amazing they are live. And I was like, oh God. But then the piano came in almost playing flamenco. And yeah, that's my kind of thing. I warmed up a bit. So I really liked the piano flamenco bits, but I think his voice sounds like gravel, Tom Waitsy-esque. And I really didn't like it. And I like the gentle ending. So I feel like I went on a roller coaster of emotions for this one. So it wasn't my least favorite because I think, Romeo and Juliet was my least favorite. Here, at least, there's elements that I liked. But yeah, I thought, if this is Dire Straits live, I don't think I want to go see them.
Yeah, his voice is quite gravelly live. And this is like peak Dire Straits. I've listened to them in the past 10 years, and his voice is even more Tom Waitsy. Like, it's got a version of him doing Romeo and Juliet maybe 5 years ago, and it's a whole different song. I don't know if he's a smoker or what happens, but yeah, Mark, I guess, to be fair, his voice was never the strongest part of the band, but yeah, I think they're better on the albums when they are live. But I wanted to throw, a live track to you so you can see the full colours of Dire Straits. So after hearing 10 songs, having some pleasure and pain, what's your final thoughts? Are they overrated?
I think they are overrated. I enjoy some elements of their songs and have very nostalgic memories for some of the others, but they are enormous, absolutely enormous. And I don't think, well, I was going to say, I don't think they deserve it. That's quite harsh. But it's just one of those situations where I'm like, there are more interesting bands. I think the fact that there's clear country elements obviously is going to not going to warm me towards them. Although I do think they're quite smart in how they use the guitar. The guitar is excellent. The guitar playing is excellent, and I can totally appreciate that musicianship. It's not for me. I don't understand how it is for so many people. So overrated.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting because do people under 30 know who they are?
They probably know. I see. You were saying what are the biggest songs? For me, the biggest songs are Sultans of Swing and Money for Nothing. I feel like they would know at least one of those.
Money for Nothing.
Probably not much more.
Yeah, so then are they overrated if a lot of the population hasn't even heard of more than one song?
But they're still so... I mean, I gave you the Spotify stats. Like, okay, sure, we haven't seen the age breakdown, but they are still... Like, they have not released an album since 91.
Yeah.
And they're the 370th biggest band in the world. They clearly have new fans. So... And, it's dads and granddads introducing new generations. So, yeah, no, you're not swaying me with that. Absolutely overrated.
I will say not overrated because for reasons that I think the fact they've never done a grab the money and run reform tour, you've got to give them some sort of kudos to that. Most bands of their generation have done a 10-year, a 20-year, a 30-year reunion. So, you got to applaud them for that. I believe that some of the touring band now tour under the name The Straits.
Okay.
It's just like...
Sounds weird by itself.
I mean, but surely Mark Knopfler is the main reason you go see Dire Straits. So to me, yeah, they're not overrated, they're not underrated. If they ever did, come back and did a tour, I would be curious to see them live. So I guess I can't think they're overrated. I probably won't buy an album. I think they probably are a best of band. They've probably got maybe 10 songs. 8 of those are on this playlist that I like.
Yeah, it surprises me then that you wouldn't think they're overrated because, yeah, do they deserve all those accolades when they're a best of band? The nostalgia's too strong for you, Fran, and the guitar playing's too good.
Well,
clearly,
my dad would hate me so much if I declared his favorite band overrated. So
for the sake of Fran's dad, fine.
Yeah, they sit in the middle, which I think is what we said about Bruce Springsteen as well, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, similar. Although I prefer Bruce Springsteen to Dire Straits, to be fair.
Do you like music? Do you like podcasts? Do you like your hosts that are slightly eloquent with their words and well spoken and articulate them in a perfect way? Then you can find 2 out of those 3 things on Pick a Disc. I'm your host Matt Latham, and each fortnight a guest comes onto the podcast to talk about an album that they want to talk about for whatever reason they want to. We talk about the artist, we talk about the songs, and we also talk about the album, and we never talk about the artwork because I always forget. Other than that, we always talk about the good things and why people like what they like, and you'll find that a lot in Pick a Disc. So find us on all your favourite podcatchers of choice, and I look forward to finding out the discs that you're picking.
Underrated.
Welcome back for part 2. We're now diving into Cheap Trick as our underrated choice. So again, I have created a 10-track playlist. This playlist will persuade Babs to love this band. Hopefully, it may not. Who can say? So, if you don't know who Cheap Trick are, they are a band from Rockford, Illinois. They emerged in the mid-70s, and then they struggled as a band until they bizarrely became big in Japan. And I think the phrase "big in Japan" comes from this band. This is where it came from. So
I didn't know that.
They were the first band to find out that they're fucking huge elsewhere. So they were made 3 albums of middling success in America. They had supported Queen and Kiss and the Kinks, and then they were told that it might be worth them going to Japan because they're selling quite well. So they flew second class to Tokyo and flew back first class because they were fucking massive in Japan, like Beatles style. Like they were not even allowed to leave the hotel. So imagine being in that band, like playing to 200 people and then going to Tokyo and playing to 15,000 screaming fans. This is insane. So the news trickled over to America, and the record label made a live in Japan for Japan only, and it became the biggest import of all time in America, so much so that the American side released it to an American audience, and it went fucking massive. And then Cheap Trick suddenly found fame, and a lot of their earlier singles were re-released as the live version you hear on Budokan. So this is why I have 4 songs, I think, from that album, live at Budokan. Did you have any knowledge of Cheap Trick at all?
So the only 2 songs I knew by Cheap Trick going in were obviously I Want You to Want Me, and which I knew was an unusual song for them, that it isn't totally representative of their sound, and Surrender because it's on Guitar Hero 2. This is all I knew. And going in, I thought, holy crap, they have a lot of albums. They have 20 albums. So that in a way must have been difficult for you to make this playlist, or, you know, are you more focused on a few of them?
So I made a choice. So when I discovered that there's a big gap on Spotify, so like from 95 to 2009, there's fuck all on Spotify. I don't know why. So I thought, okay, in that case, I would just concentrate in the first 2 decades, because that's when they were at their biggest, I guess. You know, they started the 80s massive and the end of the 80s massive. I guess that's the peak Cheap Tricks. If you're going to sell someone the band, you'd probably sell them from 1977 to 1985, I guess.
So I thought, they're not really a band that I like. You know, I find I Want You to Want Me annoying, and Surrender I thought was a decent song. You know, Surrender made me think, okay, maybe there's more to them than this, and that's what I was kind of hoping to get from your playlist, especially when I found out that they had lots of different albums. And I would say, having listened to the playlist, it is a little bit different to what I thought it was going to be. Comparing them to Dire Straits, their lyrics are about seemingly nothing. Every time I'm like, there's no point in this. And they're still pretty huge. They've got 3.85 million monthly listeners and released an album last year still. So yeah, what is the lineup like? Is it, you know, the front man or not? Or
so apart from the drummer, who was kind of sacked, and there's been lawsuits bubbling over. So Rick Nielsen's son is now the drummer. Apart from that, it's the same lineup from 1977.
Impressive.
The bass player Tom Peterson did leave in 1980, but he returned in 1988. So yeah, it's been the same lineup now for 30 odd years. And yeah, they make more albums in the past 10 years than through the 90s and noughties. So yeah, they're really going for it. They rediscovered themselves. I think around 2005, they realized that we're Cheap Trick. Why don't we be Cheap Trick? And then they sort of went back to doing the sound of the late 70s, and they've kind of stuck with that sound, and that's why they've gained success again, kind of. Yeah, I mean they're in the 70s now, so it's mad how fast they're still touring. And I think they nearly died a couple of years ago. They're in a Canadian music festival, and the stage collapsed whilst they're playing.
Oh God!
So they have survived death, and I think 2016 they made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they brought their drummer back to play live with them. So that's pretty cool. I discovered the band, maybe similar to you, with Guitar Hero too.
Yeah, bring it on, Guitar Hero.
So I knew I wanted to want me from, you know, what's it called? 10 Things I Hate About You, the cover. Of
course. Yeah, I think that is probably where I first heard this. Or maybe was it my parents? I don't know. And I didn't realize, by the way, that the famous version was live, but it is the live version from Budokan. No idea.
So if you listen to I Want You to Want Me, the album version, it's fucking naff as shit. It's really cheesy, and the band hates it as well. The definitive track of their biggest hit is the live version from Budokan. So yeah, I knew I got into Surrender, and that's what sort of like made me want to discover some more Cheap Trick. So they're an odd band. So they have 2 hot guys. The front man, Robin Zander, is your typical hot rock frontman. No, he's got long blonde hair, a stunning voice, and the bass player always has his shirt undone. And then Rick Nielsen, the guy who writes all the songs, is a freak. Not a freak in a nice way. A freak in a nice way.
In a relatable way.
Yeah, like geeks and freaks. Yeah, and so he had like a baseball cap on backwards, wearing a cardigan, and the drummer Carlos, is it Carlos? Bunny Carlos looks like an accountant. So they're such a weird band to look at, and I think that's why Japan liked them, because they stood out as being this isn't the norm. We don't used to have like two geeks next to two hot guys. So I kind of that appealed to me. And watching Rick play live, he's bizarre. He's constantly figuring out picks every 4 seconds in the audience. He's gurning the entire time, dancing around, and it just seemed like so different from all of his other cod rock bands from that era, like Chicago, Foreigner. It's like they have a sense of humor, and that's maybe because they're into British music. So Rick is a massive Beatles file, and is that a word? And the band Beatlemaniac, and they've even toured doing Sgt. Pepper, the entire album. And obviously they've worked with George Martin. Rick and Carlos played on John Lennon's Double Fantasy. Do you know that?
Not at all.
There you go. Yeah. So I started to slowly discover Cheap Trick. They became more bonkers as we went along, especially into the mid 80s. And Rick would have made a 5-neck guitar, which he would play with.
So is he, when people kind of make fun of rock stars with all their kind of funky guitars, is he like that archetypal frontman that they're making fun of?
No, because it's all tongue-in-cheek. Like he's taking the piss, because he's a guy with a baseball cap on backwards with a 5-neck guitar, and the guitar looks like him, and each neck his legs and arms. So it's not him trying to be cool, it's him taking the piss. And he said he would get more applause for his guitar than anything else in the set list. I've always enjoyed the nerds. I like Devo of the same era, so that kind of appealed to me. So I've just made a playlist kind of scanning the 80s era. I almost put on The Flame. So in the late 80s, they had a number one mega hit with a power ballad called The Flame, but it's not written by them. It was written.
I saw it. So it's a British band.
Yeah, so they were like near the end of the 80s, they're getting forced to have hits. So they're getting forced to work with people. And so although it is a number one, I think the band hates it, and it doesn't represent Cheap Trick to me, because there's not a song. It's a bit like Aerosmith, I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. This isn't written by them. It's it's that of that time. So that's why I've omitted it from the playlist, because it gives Cheap Trick a bad name.
You don't want to give Cheap Trick a bad name, as Bon Jovi sang. Yeah.
So they've also influenced loads of people, like Billy Corgan is a big fan. Slash is a big fan. A lot of people say that Robin's vocals influenced grunge. I know I might shock you, but he can sing in a really gritty way when he wants to.
I really liked his voice. I really, really liked his voice on most of these songs.
Yeah, so he can go from raw rocky to pure pop in seconds, which is quite rare. And for someone with that talent, it's weird how they didn't stay big, because he seemed to have the full package. So I don't really know why they only had maybe 2 or 3 years being at the top of the game. So so by the literally by 1981, they had gone from having a number 1 album to a number 62 album. I don't really know what happened, to be fair, but there you go.
Well, I guess unlike Dire Straits, I think sometimes people listen to people will buy records because that's the popular thing at the time, and maybe that's the kind of band that Cheap Trick were, where they, of course, I'm sure they have a loyal fan base to be able to make as many records, but it wasn't as big, and they didn't keep it up as much as Dire Straits.
I will stop mumbling on about Cheap Trick, and I'm moving to the playlist. So I started out, as I had to, with the track Hello There, because, welcome to Cheap Trick. And it was simply written for soundcheck. It starts off with drums, then brings in the bass, then brings in guitar, then brings in vocal. It's a perfect song for soundcheck. And it's just, and then it becomes this beautiful crafted 2-minute pop song with a brilliant fast guitar solo at the end of it. It's aggressive, it's hooky, and I think it's a great introduction to Cheap Trick. What do you think?
So I mentioned that I really like his voice, and I think because I only knew I Want You to Want Me and Surrender, I thought, this isn't just a pop voice on a rock song. There's more layers to it than that. I obviously had to deeply analyze the lyrics of this song, which are very, very deep, obviously. I wasn't a big fan of the tune, but I could appreciate the guitar solo, basically.
See, I couldn't get that opening vocal out of my head for weeks. We've mentioned it already, but so we move on to Surrender. On this version, you hear them introducing it as a next single. So although this is the best version, at the time, no one had even heard it. And it still sounds brilliant. And you can hear the screaming Japanese fans behind it. So yeah, I discovered it on Guitar Hero. I instantly fell in love with it. It's some strange song about, thinking your parents are weird and finding out they're secretly cool when they're listening to your Kiss records and fucking on the sofa. We've all been there. It's power pop. It's a pop song with distorted guitars, loads of drum fills, a really catchy chorus, and it's just it's not an ordinary subject matter, and they're not an ordinary band. And I guess this is another track that's sings out the best parts of Cheap Trick to me, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and I know you do.
Well, I actually prefer the Guitar Hero version.
Get out of town.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. So I really enjoyed the We're All Right sing-along section just before the end, and the guitar and drum duels. I think if there'd been a bit more of that, I would have liked it, but I think it's the harmonies, the surrender, like it just made it sound so saccharine and so pop, and I was like, oh no. Like I think because on Guitar Hero you're so focused on the guitar rather than the vocals came out too much for me in this live version.
So have you listened back to the single version?
I have not listened to the single version, so I think that's what I need to do, and then revise my opinion. But because I was like, okay, this is the one I know, I'm sure I'm going to like this. And then when he goes surrender, I was like, oh no, what's going on here? So who did Guitar Hero 2? Was it something Activision? Well done.
Maybe. After they became quite big in America, and they released the Dream Police, which was their last sort of like big album, they then got to work with John Lennon, and so they then asked if they could get George Martin, because if you're a Beatles fan, who do you want to produce your next album? They then thought, right, we've got George Martin, we have to have strings, because the Beatles are strings. So this is the band at the top of the game, thinking, right, let's make the most bombastic music we can before we're dropped. So to me, that's what it sounds like. Unfortunately, this is maybe the only song I like on the entire album. I don't know what happened. This is literally 1 year from the Dream Police, which is a great album. So I don't know if it's burnout. The bassist had just quit so he could do his own solo album. So it could be like they're just being forced to make new albums and they hadn't got the material. Maybe that's what it is. I also enjoy the backing vocal section at the end. But what about you?
So this was a very different start. And I thought, oh, hello, where are we? Then I think when his voice comes in, it really reminded me of I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight a lot. I couldn't get it out of my head. And it kind of gets progressively more emotional. And I wrote, it almost goes sort of sparks like. I didn't hate it. I thought there was a lot going on, and I liked the No More section breakdown and the stop section in the last third. But it's one of those songs that I liked bits of. I can get on board with the construction, but as a whole, I didn't really like it. And I listened to it twice. I think maybe I need a few more listens to get into it.
I think with a lot of Cheap Trick songs, you do need to give it a lot of listens. They do kind of have more depth than you know. Well, not more depth than you think. Like because I think Rick Nielsen is quite an interesting songwriter. So yeah, maybe give it. Well, I doubt you will, but anyway.
No. But okay, keep going and keep going. Keep going.
So yeah, like when you have a band, you have like a billion albums. It's like, so what songs do I do? Do I create a playlist of my top 10 Cheap Trick songs, which I haven't done? I thought I will just give you all the different versions of Cheap Trick, and then in 1983 they teamed up with Uber producer Todd Rundgren, who also produced Sparks, and created
there we go. Yeah.
And created Next Position Please, which is maybe their last interesting album. Interesting in a way that this is a band who embraced technology, I guess.
Like Dire Straits.
Yeah, like Dire Straits. And this is a very different band to the band who are saying hello there, how you doing, whatever. So we have
Whatever.
we have a track called 3D. I know it was a 50s thing, but by the 80s it had come back, and there was lots of like 3D films like Jaws 3D and Jason 3D. So I don't know if that's influenced the tone, but the best part for me is when halfway through the song they get bored and they press every single effects button on the recording booth to change the effects, including the robot, and then have some fucked up electro tom sounds, and then like a wiggly guitar, and then it goes back into the song. So it's a normal, decent pop punk, not pop punk, power pop rock track, and they seem to be bored and then just go fucking berserk, and I love them for it. What are your thoughts?
I'm gonna read out my notes in order. This is more my kind of thing, rock in a minor key. I quite like the harmonizing and whatever weird percussion is going on, plus all the effects on the voices, the weird synths, and how they mesh in the long instrumental section. Are they trying to be AC/DC? This is my favorite so far, but I didn't save it to Spotify. It's under 4 minutes long, but they pack a lot in. So there we go. That was the journey I went on.
Yeah, I didn't hear AC/DC, but yeah, I mean, this is just an album track, so you can't find anything about this on the internet at all.
But it's definitely. I was like, this is much more like it. Like, I guess not necessarily this, but because they were picked as underrated, and because I knew that their most famous songs don't reflect their sound, I expected something more like this. So I was very glad when the song came along.
Well, yeah, they have a lot of different versions of Cheap Trick. That's why it's interesting. What in the mid '80s, when you are looking at similar bands, I can't imagine Aerosmith doing that. Can you? Really?
No. No, but I mean, I don't know Aerosmith enough really in the album tracks. Maybe some would be more experimental. I guess it does depend. Like, how much commercial success do you want? / how much is your record company pressuring you to do it? Because I guess this was a time, as we've mentioned in other places, this was a time with more money and maybe more room to experiment. And a band that was as big as they were just after their second album maybe had the luxury to do that.
I don't know, because I mean, this album was the first album the record company asked them to do a cover. And they were told to cover a song by the Motors called "Dancing the Night Away," and Todd Rundgren refused to even produce it. And they dropped loads of songs from the album. Yes, that's I find it even more interesting how they were allowed to keep 3D.
But maybe it was like, that was it. It was such a strong reaction against that the record company were like, all right, fine, we'll keep the peace and keep the weird robot people on.
Sticking with the same album, this is another bonkers edition. Again, not a single. It's called Invaders of the Heart. I think they're starting by playing My Generation by The Who.
They are, yeah.
Yep. And I think that's tongue-in-cheek because the song has a similar vein to it. Like, they never mentioned it's never mentioned in the credits or anything because they own the album. So I think it's a piss take because they must have known this is a bit like The Who in it. So let's just show our cards that we know it's like The Who. Every time I meet the drummer, which obviously happens every day,
I used to go out with a drummer.
There we go.
For 11 years. So there we go.
Well, please email him this track. I mentioned this song because I have never known a pop song to showcase the drummer more than this. It's absolutely fucking insane. So it's a classy, normal pop song, but then for no bizarre reason, they fill it with as much drumming as possible, and then halfway through, I think it's Rick counts to 30. And then with obviously 30, why not 30? And then Carlos just goes fucking insane, playing the drums for like 10 minutes. It then stops and starts again, and then stops and starts again. And I love it. I can't stop listening to the song because it's also quite catchy, and it was never going to be a single because of the drumming. So they kind of hurt themselves a little bit, but I'd love to see this live, and you can't find it live anywhere, which is sad.
Shame. Yeah, I absolutely love the drumming, and I love a drum solo. I think guitar solos are so prevalent. Drum solo is not enough. I put more of this, please. And yeah, I can appreciate the drumming and the counting section with punk guitars, but I think the fact that it started with My Generation riffing, it's interesting that you say that it's meant to be tongue-in-cheek.
I think it is.
It made me be like, I'd rather they'd have just continued with My Generation because it's just not as good. Like, that's a classic epic song. And it's so, 3D is, let me check, 3 minutes 37 and feels much longer, but in a good way. It's like, wow, my God, how can they pack so much in to 3 minutes 37? This was 4 minutes and it felt longer to me. Like it felt like a bit of a drag. Like if I was writing this song, I would have taken out My Generation. I would have just had some counting and some drums and made it like 1:30. That's it. That's how I would prefer this song. So yeah, I can understand why you like it, but yeah, I only like bits of it.
Did the chorus not do anything for you then? Invaders of the heart.
Not really, no. I'm afraid. I just drum solos, please.
he is a really good drummer, and like I say, guys, check him out because he does not look at all like your average drummer.
To be fair, I did not see any live videos for either Dire Straits or Cheap Trick, and I'm sure I'm missing something.
Well, I think the problem is like with that big Japan album, obviously live footage in 1978 is pretty shit.
Mm-hmm.
So the live footage of them is kind of like chat shows in the 80s when half the time it's only the singer actually doing a live recording, the band are miming, so there's not enough decent footage of them live. And then by the time you do see decent live footage, it's like, you know, they're maybe in their late 50s, early 60s, so you think maybe this isn't them at the peak skills, maybe. So moving on to Tonight It's You, which again I think is them kind of looking for a hit. It's probably the most glossy radio song they ever made, and I think it's sad because I think it's a decent 80s rock track. It's got 3 different sections. It's got like a soulful pop vocal, which Robin does great. It then has like a rock bridge. And then it has like a power pop radio friendly chorus with like a soaring harmony. And it got somewhere, but like, yeah, I don't think it even hit top 40. And I just feel a bit sorry for them because, you know, I think any other band who recorded this in like 1986 would have had a big hit with it. But Cheap Trick, for some reason, it's like they're blacklisted for some reason. I don't get it. What's your thoughts?
Well, again, Fran, I'm sorry to say this, but this was my least favorite.
I thought it would be.
Because again, I will read my notes as is. Sounds a bit like Bon Jovi, plus the pre-chorus bit sounds like ABBA's Mamma Mia. These are not influences I normally like. Key change in the chorus, no. But then, you know, to try and end on a positive, I said I like all the different types of guitar sounds. Again, his voice and the synth string section I enjoyed, but no, just no.
Or Cheap Trick. Okay, so next up, we're going back to Japan with Hello Kiddies. This was one of the band's first tracks they wrote, I believe. It's kind of a bit glam rock, and you know, Hello Kiddies to me, with the same drum pattern as Gary Glitter, has some warning signs. Not one person has mentioned that, but I believe the song is about stay young, because you're going to be old and die soon. So that's what it's about. That makes
sense, yeah.
It's not actually about anything to do with...
Schools for fools, today money rules, and everyone steals it, yeah.
Exactly. It's not about watching children. The end, those comparisons of Gagler end here. It's again, it's a Carlos masterclass. I love his drumming. I love the raw punk sort of like live vibe and the buzzsaw guitars. And again, it shows, you know, Robin's versatile vocal. What are your thoughts?
One line, sinister punk, and I much prefer it. Yeah, I really like this song. I still didn't save it. I haven't saved a single song yet. I enjoyed 3D, but I didn't save it. You have to wait to the end to see if I do. And this one, I think, yeah, of all the songs, it's the one that seems to be about something. A lot of their songs do not seem to be about anything. And it's interesting that you say that, yeah, they like British music, because Hello Kiddies sounds exactly what a British person would say in, what was this, 77?
Yeah.
Like right in the thick of punk. Clearly they were influenced by that, but that fell away a little bit later. I really enjoyed this, and I really enjoyed it being live. You can feel the atmosphere and you can feel his charisma.
Thank you. So I did find one track from semi-recent times, although it's not available on Spotify, which is Give It Away from the 2006 album Rockford, which is their hometown. And I believe it's called that because this was, like I said, a return to their earlier sound. This is back to the aggressive pop music they wrote back in 1977. And then I just enjoy the Rick pitch bending guitar riff. Like, he's still got ideas, 30 odd years later. It's fairly formulaic chorus, but this album got great reviews because I think people are just happy that the Cheap Trick they loved as kids had finally returned after having some interesting tries in the 90s failed quite badly. So what's your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think it says on their Wikipedia that over the course of the band's career, they've experienced several resurgences of popularity and build a dedicated cult following. And you can tell why, because they have a sound in a way that, it's fans of a certain era will find something they like within the Cheap Trick discography. And I mean, this wasn't one of my favorites. I wrote that this is pop punk, and that's not a genre I normally like, as previously discussed. But I think it's fine but forgettable, but impressive that they're still making music like this. I can appreciate that. And yeah, I was going to ask you, I don't know if you've heard it, like how are their latest albums, including they have a Christmas one called Christmas. Have you listened to it?
I have an alternative Christmas playlist, and their Christmas song is on there because it's actually quite decent. But this is very much what they've been doing for the past 15 years. Like they now have this more modern version of the 70s era, and it's perfectly fine, but nothing really excites me as much as the first 4 albums. But yeah, it's a bit like Duran Duran, to be fair. Duran Duran were a band who constantly wanted to be a new Duran Duran, then kind of ran out of ideas and now gone back to being Duran Duran from 1982. And that seems to be what they do now each album. Personally, that doesn't excite me, so I don't really care anymore. But I think if you were a Cheap Trick fan and you like having the same delicious breakfast every morning, then this is for you. Personally, sometimes I don't want to have the same thing again and again. So but there you go.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So moving on to I think so after the surprise success of Budokan, this was their next studio album, which is called The Dream Police. So again, it had bigger production because the label were now confident. And I didn't give you the 2 big singles because The Dream Police was a big single, but
I don't think I would have known them though if you had.
So this is, I think, that maybe the 4th single from the album. It came out in 1980 because I think it's the best single from the album. Although it wasn't a hit, it's got a bit similar to Stop the Game. It's got a bigger production with now an orchestra behind them. The verses are rocking, and the top line of the chorus is pure power pop. But again, this was the start of the commercial fall, and I don't really get it because I've listened to a lot of music from 1979, and this doesn't seem to be doing anything wrong for me personally.
So this one took me 3 listens to have an opinion on. I didn't know what I thought because it was a little melodic, but I really liked the dueling guitars and the strings. And in the end, Fran, I decided I liked it.
Oh, win!
But it wasn't immediate, and I think it was the least immediate of the songs that you picked.
Like the ending with the.
I do like the ending. Yeah, no, it was the chorus to me that I didn't like as much. It was so yeah.
But yeah, again, it's just weird why it wasn't a hit. So ending the playlist, there's only one way to end it, and that is with saying Auf Wiedersehen, live from the Budokan in 1978. This is interesting lyrics.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get into.
So, this is actually a B-side to Surrender, interesting enough. But this is the dark, gritty sound of hatred from Rick Nielsen telling someone, to fuck off in many different languages, many different ways, and to even commit suicide, maybe. I don't know if it's tongue-in-cheek. I don't know. I tried to find an interview to see what he means, but I guess because it's not a single, no one really asks him. But yeah, this is as dark and as rocky as they go, which is maybe why Anthrax have covered it. There you go.
Anthrax are one of those bands. I could not name you an Anthrax song. I have no idea.
I can now name this song.
Okay, that's the only one you can name.
So yeah, so what do you think?
Thank you for leaving the best till last.
Oh,
yes,
dirty Cheap Trick.
You know me, someone's being unhappy. That's what I want to hear. I love this song. I saved the song. I put scuzzy, unhappy guitars and great drums. Love his voice and his pronunciation as well of all the things in all the different languages. Like, is there more of this on Cheap Trick, please? Because I would love to hear more like this. What songs?
Yes,
would you say?
Well, just listen to that album. Listen to Live in Budokan because that is as rocky as they went. To be fair, I think
okay.
they've not
Damn
done
it. Come on, Cheap Trick.
What is quite interesting is like for a band who became famous for a live album, they haven't actually made another live album until like 2002, which is bizarre. So that's why I'm always trying to look for them in the 80s, like live, and anything I can find is fucking chat shows where they're not going to be able to do this. So yeah, so just check that album out, and they have got some more grittier tracks. But yeah, not enough. I guess this is as dark as it went for.
As it gets, yeah. I mean,
Cheap
come
Trick.
on, like please, the person equivalent of Spotify Radio, can you please send some over or something? Because this, I was like, yes, thank you. Like, and I think because the guitars and the drums are so good, I just felt like it was a missed opportunity to not do more of this, because whenever there's dueling guitars and an opportunity for a drum solo, when I guess I just like aggression. What does that say about me? I don't know. I'll have my existential crisis after the record. I loved it.
I hoped you'd like this and Ella Kiddies, because that's them at the rawest.
But 3D was the one that I liked. But yeah, the lyrics are really crap. I mean, there are many here among us who feel their lives as a joke, and for you we sing this final song. For you there is no hope. Suicide. So yeah, I wrote, did it cause controversy at the time? But sorry, hang on. But like you said, it was a B-side, right? So I guess there wasn't.
Yeah, it's on the album as well. But like, imagine 15,000 screaming Japanese girls while singing this song to them.
Yeah, I mean, I messaged you about this, but Stromae has just released a song called L'Enfer, which means hell. And he did this very touching performance of the song on the French Evening News, where they were interviewing him about it. And then suddenly the camera cuts to, he starts singing, he looks directly into the camera, and then it turns into this weird performance where the camera's rotating against his background and he's singing like directly into your soul. And the lyrics are about him having suicidal thoughts. And I was like, I much prefer that to people going like fucking well and I mean, freedom of speech, of course they can write songs like this, like I get it, like when you feel, there are people I'm sure that I felt such hatred towards that I'd be like, yeah, go kill yourself. But yeah, it does feel very in your face and unsympathetic for sure. But yeah, for me they get away with it because the music is so good.
My actual favorite song is Southern Girls, which I haven't included, so that's my further listening. Yeah, listen to Live in Budokan, the 30th anniversary version, and I'm sure you'll find some other dark, angry moments by Cheap Trick for you to enjoy. But as I said, I thought I can't keep it to one live album. I need to spread out the song.
Yeah. And we went through a journey together, Fran.
We did go through
discography. Yeah.
So Cheap Trick, I'm guessing you don't think they're underrated.
No, I don't think they're underrated. Given how popular they are and how they are, I wouldn't say that necessarily overrated. I'm glad to have discovered a different side to them, and will be checking out all the gritty, rocky elements. So thank you, Fran, for introducing me there, because honestly, when Dire Straits and Cheap Trick were proposed, I thought, oh god.
I was hoping you'd enjoy Cheap Trick. I knew you'd hate Dire Straits. That's why there's a sense of sadness.
Again, I didn't hate Dire. I appreciate private investigations. I saved, like, for sure I will be listening to that and trying to find similar. I think it's very rare that I dislike all the songs from a band, especially when we have a 10-track playlist. But yeah, I'm good on Cheap Trick. May they keep making money and making people happy.
So for me, I enjoyed maybe a year of discovering the album slowly, and again, I like Underdog, and the fact that they burnt bright for just 2 years and then struggled for so many, I kind of felt, I like maybe this is like my life in many ways. Cheap Trick. So yeah, and I find a rock band with a sense of humor a rare thing, like Sparks, for example.
Yes. Again, I keep bringing them up, but System of a Down can only get away with talking about the fucking prison industrial complex because they also sing about having group sex on the same album.
Yeah, and unfortunately, in the music industry, they kind of like scoff bands with a sense of humor. Like you're not supposed to be you're not supposed to be funny. So you're either Weird Al Yankovic or you're Led Zeppelin. You can't have a sense of humor and also be critically acclaimed. It's a bit sad.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, the first 6-7 years of Cheap Trick I find very interesting. So therefore, to me, they're underrated. But I understand that not many people like them, and this will be the last time I talk
You
about
say
Cheap
not
Trick.
that many people like them.
In
But
the
they
UK,
have,
maybe UK.
yeah, because they do have 3.8. Hang on, let's go look at the breakdown of
But
the
is
cities.
is that just those two songs? Like, it'd be so cool if it told you how many people listen to the albums.
So yeah, it absolutely is. I Want You to Want Me and Surrender dominating, and The Flame is third at 65 million plays. Then Ghost Town, then Mighty Wings, and Dream Police, and a different version of The Flame, and then If You Want My Love and Don't Be Cruel. Those are the top 10. And if you look at so a very interesting list of top cities. Number 1, Santiago in Chile. Number 2, Mexico City in Mexico. Number 3, Sydney, Australia. Number 4, LA. Number 5, Brisbane, Australia.
Interesting.
So,
They're big in Australia. Okay.
I think there's a lot of rock bands that are huge in South America, and I think Australians are more musical than perhaps people give them credit for, because there's lots of artists that are not Australian that are really big in Australia when you look at the Spotify statistics.
So yeah, Cheap Trick, maybe not underrated. Dire Straits, maybe not overrated. Let us know. And Fran and Babs are always here to discuss your dad rock needs.
Anytime, anywhere, hit us up.
Any final thoughts?
I was slightly dreading this episode. I was slightly dreading that it would just be 20 songs that I didn't like, and it was much more nuanced than that. So thank you, Fran, for continuously expanding my musical horizons.
Beautiful. I'm pleased you have experienced. That's a phrase.
Wow.
Thank you, Jimmy. And on that bombshell, I would say goodbye. Thank you for listening, guys. And
Auf Wiedersehen, everyone.
Oh yeah, of course. Auf Wiedersehen. And
don't commit suicide.
Don't commit suicide. I was about to say see you next time, but I mean it'd be odd if I was looking at you. But if that's a way to get more listeners, I'm available.
I think this is our best ending yet, Fran.
Ta-ra!
Bye.
Goodbye now, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you get the idea. So thank you for listening to our Dad Rock special. Do you prefer Dire Straits or Cheap Trick? You can let us know via the amazing world of social media. We are Underrated Music Pod on Instagram and OU Music Pod on Twitter. So give us a follow, subscribe to this podcast, and get in touch if you have any themes or even if you want a guest on the podcast. It has been a pleasure to be listened to. Thanks and have a lovely day.